What projects on Cardano have pleasantly surprised you? Well, I'm surprised by the level of productivity and quality that I've seen from some of the thinking behind the DEXs. And I think there's a lot of great potential technological collaboration there, creating a unified view of how to emulate an account model and a unified view of how to assist them with scaling. They all have different ideas of that, but it'd be nice to actually create some consolidated standards there. I think there's a big misconception about what blockchains are for with applications. And this comes from either people not really understanding how software works or from bad marketing that came out of Ethereum back in the early days when they were pushing that whole world computer thing. And you see other protocols like, we're the world computer. Okay. Vitalik himself will be the first person to tell you that Ethereum was not meant to be some server in the sky with unlimited elastic resources. He'd say, hey, it's like a hand calculator. It doesn't have a lot of power. It doesn't have a lot of computational ability, memory. It doesn't have a lot of storage. And that's by design because it's a replicated system. It'll take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years to figure out all the protocols necessary to create a truly decentralized, giant, parallelizable computer that has Ethereum-like properties, okay? That's not the point of these ledgers. The point of these ledgers are that you have programs and you want properties in those programs that run. You'd like censorship resistance. You'd like tamper resistance. You'd like inclusive accountability, meaning you can check the outputs and verify that they're being honest. You want global accessibility with these types of things. You want transparency with these types of things. You want equal consideration in the application of the rule set with these types of things, meaning that Alice is treated the same way as Bob is treated, okay? You don't want Alice to have to stand in line to go to the front door, but Bob gets to go around the back door and hang out with the band backstage. Everybody has to stand in the same line. When you want those properties, the point of the blockchain is to somehow take a collection of the business logic of your application and run those things in a way so that we get those guarantees. You don't have to trust the vendor. So here's a great example. A poker game. Okay. How do you know that the game is provably fair? Does it matter to you that the game is running on Bob's server versus running this great decentralized utopia? The crux of it is the players I'm playing aren't robots and that the deck of cards is a fair deck of cards and there's not collusion occurring so that a certain set of actors always get better cards than me. Okay? So you want provably random numbers. So you have a provably random shuffle. And you want human actors playing against you, not bots. Okay. You can include that logic with a blockchain. And then you can run the GUI on your client side and the server can do all the other stuff and the player matching and all these other things. The point is the blockchain is acting as an audit layer, an enforcer. It's basically the validator in chief. It's the judge that's making sure that you have honest consideration. Also, what do you want to know? When you win, you get your winnings. There's nothing worse in the world than fighting a hard fight, you win, and then you have all this money that you're supposed to redeem. They say, oh, so sorry, we've decided not to pay you. So you'd like guarantee that upon victory and loss, the losers lose and the winners win, and the money flows accordingly. That's what the blockchain does for you. Connect it to an identity store. You can do proof of human things, random captchas and all these things. You can act as an audit and accountability layer and as a source of randomness. It can ensure that front running doesn't happen, all kinds of things if it's designed properly. Now, does it then need to record every single event of your poker game, every hand, all these other things? Scale that to 10 million players every single day, 8 hours, 9 hours a day, terabytes of noise of the history of the game? No, doesn't need to record any of that. It's just there to ensure that the elements of those particular games are done fairly. So what does this mean? It means that that ledger is going to work with off-chain infrastructure that's running in people's servers or in some sort of other network, like a layer 2 network or something like that. and you trust the other people's servers and layer 2 networks because the validation predicates give you that. UTXO is perfect for this. It's not running stateful event-driven programs that are in a loop waiting for input. It's basically executing units to transform state value from one to another. And each time it does that, you have determinism and predictability, and you don't need some notion of a global order or anything like that. So what's surprising me is that a lot of people are starting to realize that. I thought it'd be a lot harder of a fight to undo the profound damage that was done with that garbage marketing about World Computer that came out 8 years ago. And people are starting to realize that there's more to the picture, more to the story, and there's an enormous amount of creativity with that. Proof carrying code, ZK rollups, layer 2 solutions like state channels, all these things where people are starting to figure out how do we create a hosting layer, but keep the hosting layer audited and accountable on the layer 1. What does that mean? That technology can scale to the billions of people. Is it censorship resistant? Of course. Because while you can censor a clique of the network, you can shut down, let's say, the American stake pools or something like that. You can't do it for every country in the world, and it's the smart cow effect. You just need one to escape, and the network is self-propagating, and it's a virtual resource. And privacy technology will scale up if that work comes. So I'm very surprised about that quality of thought and how people are approaching the problem, and it's something that's really been a great boon for everybody in industry. Thoughts on the Rick and Morty finale? Holy shit. Well, you know, Justin Roiland is a fan of Cardano. So from time to time, I'll like ping him on private messages on Twitter. Like when they did the first episode, they had Mr. Nimbus. I just sent him like, Mr. Nimbus, which was pretty funny. It was a weird season. Rick was so uncharacteristically off this season. So for the first few seasons, Rick was like a god, and he was a misanthropic, tragic Greek god, but he was very powerful and undefeatable. And then season by season, that power curve has gone down to a point where he's getting his ass kicked on a regular basis. Like I think that the great turning point episode was when he fought that Zeus-like god when he was having affairs with planets, and he lost. The Rick of season 1, that probably wouldn't have happened. And it was, oh, wow, Rick lost. Interesting. So all throughout season 5, getting his ass kicked. And it led me to believe that maybe we were actually witnessing the backstory of Evil Morty. So I asked Justin, he's like, no, there is an Evil Morty part, but no. I was like, okay, didn't get it right. And there was all these Reddit conspiracies and everything, and they were trying to piece it together because the timelines weren't matching and so forth. And there's a lot of that stuff. But anyway, you know, season 5, episode 10, where they had the Citadel with the second half after the whole Samurai Rick head fuck, where you think it's going to be like an anime episode with the crows. They basically revealed everything, Rick's entire backstory, and the fact that Mortys are like fungible. And then you realize that like Morty's not even C-137's Morty. C-137, Rick never even had a Morty because he lost Beth early on when she died from the other Rick. And this whole finite curve plot line is kind of interesting because it's an externalization of emotional trauma of the character, where the character basically constructs a wall around the multiverse where he can't be hurt, and he's always going to win in that because he's the most powerful being in that multiverse wall. So it's like a cradle. And what's great about A Hero's Journey, which is what the show writers of Rick and Morty are so in love with, Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, is that you have to leave the crib. You have to leave the village. You have to leave the Shire if you're Bilbo Baggins and go on this crazy adventure and deal with the dragon and so forth in order to be able to get the gold and have growth and so forth. So over the arc of the entire show, nothing mattered, and Rick had stacked the deck where he would always in the end win. And then suddenly, Evil Morty destroys the finite curve and creates a reality where Rick is no longer the smartest, most powerful man. and no longer guaranteed to win. So in other words, you have stakes. So it's kind of like going from the holodeck where you have safety protocol enabled to turning off the safety protocol so you can actually die in the holodeck. Okay, there's no more tutorial level. There's no more training wheels. So what does this effectively mean? It means that Rick, for the first time since the original events when his family was killed, has stakes. And he actually live and deal with those stakes. So it's actually a brilliant narrative arc that they constructed with that whole finite curve plot line. The other thing is that it set up a even greater villain than Evil Morty, which was another beautiful bait and switch that existed. Because basically what Dan Harmon did and the other writers is that there's now the ultimate villain, which is Rick, the evil Rick who killed his family. He spent a big chunk of his life and existence chasing this evil Rick who killed his family and killed tons of Ricks and built the Citadel as a consequence and everything. So that was really like the impulse that knocked him out of a peaceful, happy life and made him the nihilistic, depressed, given up Rick. But what's interesting is it's a very high probability, if they're writing correctly, that evil Rick is actually outside of the finite curve that Rick had constructed, which means that leaving the cradle may actually put him closer to his end goal of getting rid of that. Now, the other really fucked up thing is there's like when Beth was in Fruity Land or whatever it was, the Rainbow Land, he said, "Oh, I'm a horrible father." Well, actually, it wasn't true. He was a great father. He was actually prepared to set aside all this stuff to raise Beth as a real dad. So by injecting himself in a different Rick's life, he accepted the sins of that Rick because he was so lonely. He'd rather be with somebody, but he never got the chance to actually be a proper dad. And so now that finite curve's gone and the whole world is open, it's going to completely change all the dynamics and so forth. So it was actually a beautiful season finale. And I was very surprised because there were some weak episodes in the season. But that's what Rick and Morty does. They always find a way. It gets a little dry, and then they just get you back in with an amazing episode. Last season was the Vat of Acid episode, where Morty lives his entire life and gets in a plane crash and has this amazing relationship and finds true love, and then Jerry ruins it at the click of a button. So that's pretty cool. And these are not all new tropes. I mean, Star Trek: The Next Generation did that with the Inner Light. Patrick Stewart, Picard, he gets hit with the probe, and he lives an entire lifetime in like 30 minutes. And then he comes out and he's playing the flute, and has this huge formative arc on him as a captain. And the greatest writers, they work with that. They connect to that and they come back to it and they understand it. It's why Star Trek Picard is an unmitigated dumpster fire of a show. You have the show writers saying, well, Picard's never been a dad. He's never been a father. And, that's why he has difficulty with children. Guys, the Inner Light, he literally raised a family from start to finish and lived a whole lifetime. Fuck you, man. He was more than a dad. He was like walking his daughter down the aisle and all this. How can you forget that? It was one of the most formative episodes in the entire show. And there's just thousands of little things like that a good writer can take and can work with and subvert expectations in a very positive way. I didn't expect anything in that episode to go the way that it did. We viewed Evil Morty as this Machiavellian supervillain, and it turned out to be just an enabler to reveal something that Rick had done to himself and to the universe as a consequence of internal pain. And his whole raison d'etre was just simply to remove himself from an abusive situation. They foreshadowed it brilliantly in the prior episode when they were talking about toxic relationships and abusive relationships. Rick was kind of playing with that with Morty, going with the Ravens, the Crows. But then it turned out that Evil Morty was foreshadowing what Evil Morty was attempting to do. Wow. And they went back to the Phoenix Project where like the clone Ricks are there and they all get re-triggered and so forth, and little things like that. A callback to the tampered portal fluid that they did with the hacked portal gun and the Citadel of Rick, season 3, episode 7. I think it was Tales from the Citadel. Little stuff like that. So it shows you that Dan Harmon and his crew are absolutely genius writers, and they thought very, very carefully about the show. And I appreciate that as an audience. I get so frustrated when you go and do some experimental things as a show writer and you work really hard for 1 or 2 seasons, you get a wild success, and then you're like, okay, it's coasting time. Let's just, conveyor belt episode after episode. And there's no aim or direction to these types of things. That's what The Simpsons effectively did. They had these masterpiece seasons in the first 9 seasons, and now they've just been phoning it in as a show, and there's no arc, there's no purpose, there's no growth. The original episodes, you saw growth in the character, no growth in the characters. It's just an episodic thing of, monster movie of the day, this type of stuff. Yet there's profound growth with the character of Morty, the character of Rick, and so forth. And they touch topics in such a beautiful way. So great show, great finale. And I really look forward to seeing where they take it. It was a very ambitious thing to do, to kind of destroy all that and open it all up. And it's going to be fun to see where it goes. What's also interesting is the Jerry-Beth relationship. They said, hey, that whole relationship is just to create an endless supply of this very particular type of kid. There's a very low probability that if Beth was raised by Rick C-137 and not killed, that Beth would have married Jerry. There's no determinism or fate for that. There's an infinite amount of possibilities where that didn't happen. But for some reason, they keep trying to manufacture Mortys as a commodity and use them. That's not as explored as it needs to be inside the show. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Charles talks more about Rick and Morty than Hydra. Well, we released a video, a blog post. We have a whole presentation, and there's lots of stuff going on with it. There's a whole dedicated team. There's probably some beta shit to show you guys. Show up at the conference. The AMAs are about everything. And I love this right here. Shut the hell up, Charles, and talk about ongoing development with Ada. The point of the AMA is you can ask anything. You can ask about woolly mammoths. You can ask about aliens. You can ask about music. You can ask about art. You can ask about television shows. You can ask about Cardano. The Big Turtle Island IOHK posted on Twitter, is that a new video game on Cardano? No, that's the conference. We literally created a digital world just for the conference, for those who can't attend it in person.